In June of 2017, in this town in Malaysia, a fire started in a building containing 2 rice milling shops and 3 retail stores. When the fire department arrived 4 hours later, there was nothing left to save. The fire made the news when the local town councilor announced he was asking for funding for a volunteer fire department in the city. Flashback 100 years to 1909 in Cherryville, North Carolina, where sparks from a passing freight train caused a fire that burned 9 buildings in the center of the town to the ground. There was no fire department to respond. As a result of that fire, the town council created the town's first fire department 100 years after the town's establishment. This same slow rate of growth of first responder capacity in the United States is repeating itself in the developing world. There, only major cities have fire rescue capacity. Only when there's a major disaster do surrounding towns and communities demand for change. What would happen if you were in a fire at your house and the fire department didn't show up? Or if you were in a car accident and the ambulance never arrived and you were seriously injured? Did you know that 90% of all fatalities and injuries on the road occur in the developing world, but only 48% of cars drive there? The fact is, in the developing world, the fire rescue service is underfunded, under-equipped, and undertrained. There, the fire department does not show up to your house, and the ambulance does not arrive to your crash scene. There simply is a limited capacity to respond to everyday disasters, let alone large-scale natural disasters that are occurring even more frequently. If we rely on the organic growth of fire rescue capacity in the developing world, there will still be fires like the one in Long Bedian, Malaysia, 100 years from now. They're disasters for the community. The good news is that global development organizations now realize that having strong fire rescue capacity is really a foundation of economic and social stability in the developing world. The World Bank has begun the first ever global country-by-country study of fire rescue capacity they hope to complete in the next 2 years. We are experts in this subject. Why? Because we have a history of volunteerism, and we have a history of organizing and creating volunteer fire departments in our country. Many people realize that Benjamin Franklin started the first fire rescue department in Philadelphia in 1736. But few people realize that some of our most important founding fathers were also volunteer firefighters, such as Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, and John Hancock. That same sense of civic duty that led them to be volunteer firefighters is why they became leaders of our independence movement. Today, 80% of the fire rescue personnel in our country are volunteers. That's over 800,000 people contributing over $120 billion a year in their labor. But volunteerism has other very important qualities to it. Higher rates of volunteerism have been demonstrated to also create higher rates of civic engagement and voting, and of course, social engagement as epitomized by the volunteer fire rescue barbecue that probably many people in this room have been to. It also has been shown to result in lower rates of crime in communities. The fact is that volunteering is a tremendous resource we have in the United States. We should be exporting what Alexis de Tocqueville described over 100 years ago as one of America's most unique and enduring qualities. But the fact is, there is no organized, well-funded agency to accelerate the growth of fire rescue capacity in the developing world, despite the fact that we have many of the important ingredients ready. We have passionate and committed first responders in North America and Europe who want to share their knowledge and experience to help make the rest of the world a safer place. We have heroes in waiting, citizens in small communities in the developing world that want to see their communities safe and have a long-term future. And we have a tremendous amount of used fire rescue gear from North America and Europe that is doing nothing right now but piling up in our landfills. Imagine that each year in the United States alone, a pile 30 feet high in this auditorium, from this side of the auditorium all the way over to the other wall, is created each year. And for instance, protective gear for firefighters never loses its flame resistance. So I, for one, would much rather be fighting a fire in used protective gear with a hose and nozzle than running to a fire in my pajamas and a garden hose. But the question is, what are some existing models that we could use, some operating models that we can use to create this agency that would export the spirit of volunteerism and our knowledge at creating and sustaining volunteer fire rescue departments? John F. Kennedy, in a campaign speech in 1960, proposed a radical idea to provide technical assistance and community building support to developing countries around the world. As soon as he was elected in 1961, he signed into existence the United States Peace Corps to do exactly that. Since that time, over 220,000 Americans have served in over 140 countries on 2-year missions to provide that technical assistance and community building support. I think what we need to do is create a new organization I call First Responder Corps, based on the operating principles of the Peace Corps that would accelerate the growth of fire rescue capacity in the developing world. It would do it by sending trained first responders to organize, set up, and sustain new fire rescue departments in the developing world using refurbished gear and equipment to help get them started. So what would have happened in Longbedion, that town in Malaysia that had the fire in June of 2017? Had First Responder Corps been in existence and been sent on a mission there? 2 First Responder Corps advisors, 1 fire and 1 EMS, would have come to the town along with a container of refurbished equipment and a water tank fire hose pumper system that can be mounted on the back of any pickup truck that's found everywhere in the developing world. They would immediately begin to train the volunteers in the town on basic fire and emergency medical skills, along with 1 or 2 other skills that relate to the risk in the community, such as swift water rescue for flooding situations or urban search and rescue if the area is quake prone. They would also teach the volunteers how to go into the community and meet with their fellow citizens and help them become their own first responders in their homes and in their businesses. By doing this, they would create a long-term, more safe community, as well as create a sustainable volunteer fire rescue department for the community. So when that fire occurred last June in 2017, a citizen of the town would know what to do. They would use their smartphone or they would ring the fire bell. And the First Responder Corps advisors at the fire station would bring the pickup truck. The volunteers would meet there, and just like what happens in every town in America today, particularly the rural ones, the fire would be extinguished and contained, and the disaster would be averted. As news of this event spread, other towns and communities would want to have a First Responder Corps team visit them and set up a new volunteer fire department in their community. And organically and quickly, the capacity of the region would become greater to deal with larger scale everyday disasters as well as larger scale disasters. Imagine for a moment what members of that community would feel knowing that they were now protected, and the confidence that they would have in the future of their town, knowing that their town was protected. First Responder Corps taps into an existing powerful movement of fire rescue personnel who want to use their skill and experience to make the entire world a safer place for all of us. It taps into a universal urge that we all have to want to protect our family, friends, and neighbors from danger. That's an idea we can all rally around.